morning, everybody. Jim Feist. Big day. We're going to talk about, to start off, we're going to talk about, first of all, this is the Playbook ATS show. No Mark, he's in the dungeon doing his magazine, but he's going to join us in a couple of weeks. Andy, we're going to talk about the NBA, the amazing story of what's going on with, well, there's two situations going on. We're looking at elimination games from both of them. The best team in the league has been the Thunder all year long. They play great defense, totally shut down Randall and Edwards the other night, which was absolutely incredible how they do that.
Especially coming off of Minnesota's blowout win the game before that get them back into the series at 2-1. And you figure, well, maybe, and OKC was a slight favorite for a reason. They are the better team. But you would have expected Minnesota to have gained some confidence off of that. And, after playing the bully, you have a little bit, maybe, I can't say that you're overconfident if you're still down 2-1 in the series. But that was a critical game for the T-Wolves because now they're on the road and they could be playing their final game of the season tonight.
8.5-point underdog tonight. Winning by 42 points, it looks good, but it also awakens the sleeping giants, sort of.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure it's advisable to beat somebody and embarrass them that much, especially when they're actually better than you.
That's why it's difficult for me tonight to think about taking the points. I'd like to take the points. I think that, and the number's down from, I think, the first couple of games where I think it was about 9.5 or 10 OKC. But I could see this being a game where Minnesota gets very free. If you like Minnesota, you almost, well, I'm not going to say play a money line on it, but I could see this game getting out of hand late when Minnesota gets frustrated, kind of like allowing empty net goals in hockey. And all of a sudden, a 5-point game becomes an 8-point game, becomes a 15-point final.
Now, we also have another one. We have the Knicks are going to be hosting the Pacers. And quite frankly, I know the Knicks were considered going into this the better team. They had home court, et cetera, et cetera. But, when I watch these teams play, it looks to me like the Pacers are the better team. And they also are a more stable team with their lineup. And I'm not saying that the Knicks aren't stable. What I'm saying is the lineup for the Pacers works. They know what they're doing. They have an identity. They play their style. And Halliburton has been more than amazing. When you have the number of touches he has in a game and not turn it over at all, 0 turnovers is absolutely incredible. And then when you have Brunson, who is a fantastic player, but a different style of player that I don't think fits into an up-tempo game. That's my opinion, is he is not that type of player. And they're playing an up-tempo. Look at the 250 points in a game, 70-some points in the first quarter, twice now in this series. That's not their game. And I throw that back on Thibodeau.
Coaching.
I am not a big Thibodeau fan in these playoffs. The way he's when Brunson's on the floor, they're minus. Especially when teamed with the other guy. What's the big guy's name?
Okanobu?
No, the big center guy for the Knicks. We both miss it. It'll come to us. But Towns.
Cat. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah.
When Cat and Brunson are on the floor together, they were absolutely disaster. The numbers. Yeah. Prove it out. They're minus when they're both on the floor together, which they're just not gelling. And now they're playing an up-tempo style against a team that plays up-tempo better than they do. And then they put Naz Reid or Naz Smith on Brunson, and he can't He can't overhead. The worst matchup in the world for Brunson to try to score. It just isn't working. Now, have the games been close? Yes, they are very close, but you got one team playing the other team's style, which I would think, if possible, that you would try to slow the game down to a pace that you're actually better at.
Especially when you utilize your starters for I think the Knicks starters were either first or second in the league in most minutes average per game. That does not suit yourself in the fourth quarter well.
I think it's actually first. Yeah. And he's actually now in the last two games, he's actually used some of his bench players that almost never play. And then at the end of the game, instead of putting McBride in, who is a very good shooter, he puts in Shannon, and then asked why. He said, well, I needed more size. No, you didn't. You needed more points.
Points, yeah.
So it's almost like he's lost his way. He's confused. And, now they're, what, a 5 point favorite at home. The Pacers are the better team. They're playing their style of ball, and the Knicks are playing the Pacers' style of ball, which doesn't work. So I'm very confused as to what the hell they're doing. I'm not trying to knock Thibodeau as a coach. Overall, he's been in the league 12 years. He's been around. He's got a good record. Obviously he's got them this far, but in these playoffs, I think he's doing a pretty bad job.
Well, not only that, he's going up an experienced coach who had a very good playing career before becoming a coach, and he's now been a coach for 20-something years, I think, in Carlisle. And of course, he played for some very good teams as a player. He was surrounded by some really good talent. I don't recall Thibodeau having played the game. I don't remember if he played in college or not, but not at the NBA level. He's been around long enough, and he may have been Carlisle was retired by the time that Thibodeau got into the NBA coaching, I believe. But nonetheless, you're absolutely right. I'm surprised that if I'm going to look to play tomorrow night's game, and the Knicks actually were ninth. The Pacers are in offense ninth or seventh in pace. Knicks actually ninth, which was a little bit surprising. I didn't think they ranked that high overall during the season. But again, you play your starters as much, you probably would be putting up a lot of points up, or at least efficient as far as that goes. Nonetheless, when I take a look at the game tomorrow, I have to look. Maybe we look over the total. The Knicks are going to be, they're going to need some offense, and Indiana's going to do what it's done all season and what it's done so well lately and throughout the series, and probably put up their 115, 120 points.
I was wrong last night. I thought that the Knicks would come out there and play the kind of defense they did in the fourth quarter, the second half, the previous game, and I lost. I was done in the first quarter when they had 78 points.
Well, that had to do with the pace, that the Knicks did not play the proper pace early in the game.
Now, maybe they can't. Maybe they just can't. Maybe they can't play defense. Maybe they're just too slow. Maybe the matchups are that bad that they can't slow them down. That's a possibility.
Well, Indiana's a very talented team. And the kid Neesmith, who hit all those threes the other night, doesn't get the kind of attention that perhaps he deserves. He's starting to now. Siakam's been a veteran around the league for a number of years. Of course, Hartenstein and who am I thinking of now? Halliburton, is coming into prominence as far as a key player. And again, they are a very well-coached team by a coach who has a lot of experience. And I don't know that the history between the Knicks and Indiana, the playoff history, has anything to do with it, because the guys playing today were probably in junior high school when Indiana and Reggie Miller and the Knicks were having all those battles, if they were even that old at that time. But I have to, I give Carlisle an edge for getting what he gets out of his players. And sometimes you rate coaches as good, bad, or neutral. And I have to rate Carlisle as good plus and Thibodeau as bad. I'm not going to say bad and with a minus, but certainly you don't have a neutral coach against a very good or a very bad coach. You have
he's definitely getting out coached. No question about that. Now, there is another league that plays basketball, and we all know what that is. The WNBA, and the news in that league. Well, first of all, Paige Breckers got her first win. She went back to Connecticut, and they won their game against
Oh,
Connecticut.
is this Connecticut team historically bad? I mean, they've had 3 blowout losses. They're 0-5. I think the two close losses were 5 points, but they've had some blowout losses, including the one last night, 22 points. And I've tried going with Connecticut as a big underdog. I just did not apparently realize how bad they are. I can't say it's just a one game, poor effort that they had, and they've really been non-competitive in 3 of the 5 games so far. They're 0-5.
That is very true. Paige is looking like she can play at this level. She's looking good.
Getting comfortable.
The one thing in the league that we need to talk about, there is a game tonight. Indiana is going to play at Washington, and they're going to play without Caitlin Collins and
Caitlin Clark.
Excuse me, I keep saying it. Why do I do that?
But it happens to be correct. She's not going to be on the court either. She may be in court as a reporter, but she's not going to be on the court.
I'm a big Caitlin Clark fan, and I keep saying the other name, and that's twice I've done that. And
because Caitlin is not a very popular name, so when you hear it from 2 prominent people, it's a little easy to confuse them because especially since their last names both begin with the same letter, C.
You're right. So we'll get that straightened out. Thanks for correcting me again. Now, the team is deep, and they have a new coach, and they got several new veteran players on the Fever, and they're favored by, I think, 4 at Washington. Washington's playing an up-tempo style this year. That's what their coach wants to do. Sometimes when you have your fallen leader, you step up and play really hard.
Usually for the first game, that's true. It doesn't necessarily carry over, but in that first game, you're absolutely right. And I think we're seeing that priced into this line. And I'm going to add, it's an important game for Indiana to show that they can play without their leader, and they're playing one of the middle of the pack teams in the league.
The other thing is, Caitlin Clark may miss more than the projected 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They're actually saying that she might actually be out longer than that, which this team will have to figure out a way to gel without her. But it is a very deep team. They've added some very experienced players. I believe Cunningham will probably be the point guard. I think it's Sophie Cunningham. And, when you look at this league and you look at the rankings, which I have here up on the screen, you do see the Liberty at 4-0, and they're the defending champs, and the Lynx are 5-0. They obviously played one extra game.
Very well.
They met in the championship game last year, and it was a very tough game. Liberty won the championship. The Lynx are playing great, and they have Nafisa Collier is now the early favorite in MVP because Caitlin was, but she's now out, so this girl has taken over, and she's been playing dynamite. The Seattle Storm are ranked 3rd.
They're playing very well early on.
I'm not going to try to say some of these names because I'm not going to do it well. So, and then you got the Phoenix Mercury, kind of as a surprise because, they're 4-1 on the year, but they made some late additions to their team, and they're really clicking. And they don't even have Kaylee Cooper even suited up yet. But the
Mercury showed something in that first game of the season. They were at home. They opened a 2-point favorite. They actually closed a 6-point home underdog to Seattle. And apparently the people who either made the line or switched the line were wrong because the 2 actually happened to be too short because Phoenix goes out and upset Seattle, winning by hold on just a second here. There we go. They lost that Phoenix won that game by 22, and that may have been a sign that they're well prepared for the season because they've only lost that one game since then, and we've already seen Seattle's been playing pretty good basketball. It's a short sample size. They haven't even played like 2 weeks yet, but or sometimes early signs can give you some advantages.
Well, this is one thing about the WNBA. They really have not played very many games. I mean, you have one team that's played 5,
Yeah.
and it's just not enough games to really get, especially when there's so many new coaches in the league and so many new players on different rosters that you really can't put a number on them as to what they are. Then right here at number 5 is the Indiana Fever with Caitlin obviously out. This is all going to be looking different.
Yeah, those power rankings do account for Clark's injury.
Now the Atlanta Dream is an interesting team. They're 4-2, but they added Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones to the front court.
Yeah.
And boy, that has made a difference for this team. They have looked a lot better than anybody expected, but those additions have really made a difference.
Yeah, they have, and they beat Indiana on the road with Caitlin Clark. What was it? I think a week ago yesterday, last Tuesday, they beat them by 1 in a high-scoring game. They then lost at home to Indiana 2 nights later, but that was another close game, a 5-point game. And since then, I think I think that they played. Yeah, last night. And you talk about a team that's been somewhat disappointing. The LA Sparks, coming off of losses in their previous games, were in a good spot last night. They were actually Atlanta last night. What opened a 3-point road favorite. So the lines makers apparently recognize that the Sparks are maybe not the team that we thought they were entering the season, and yet the money came in on the Sparks, and they ended up going off a 2-point home favorite, and they ended up losing the game by 6 to this up and coming or surprising Atlanta team. Although again, when you take a look at some of the players that they have now, not really a surprise. And maybe later in the year we'll say, how did they even lose those 2 games?
Well, Kelsey Plum went over from the Aces over to the Sparks, and she's had a couple of really good games. The last one against the Sky. But she's been a little inconsistent also. And speaking of in the 7 and 8 teams, which are ranked right here, the Valkyries, that's a brand new team, and they're 2-2, which is kind of different when you have a brand new team that has just all been put together. And
there's a team, by the way, that last Friday went into Los Angeles, who had beaten them in the opening game of the season at Golden State, and they returned the favor. They beat the Sparks on the road. I think it was 82-73 or something like that, which is impressive for a team that basically, I think, was playing their 3rd or 4th game as a franchise, going up an experienced team with a key player, like you mentioned, in Kelsey Plum, and to lose on their home court after beating this team. I could understand them losing by double digits in their first game. It's the first time these games are playing, regular contest against, experienced teams. So maybe the win by Golden State, I'm not so sure that it says all that much about this team, although maybe later in the year we'll see. But maybe it says a lot more about the Sparks, and we'll get to them in a few moments.
Yeah, and number 8 is the Aces, who, had a couple real good years. Kelsey Plum was on that roster, and they are just not playing. I mean, they lost by 20 points to Seattle the other day.
I did not like that trade with Kelsey Plum. You have a team that has been so successful over the years. She's been a key part of it, and it really doesn't matter who's been a key part. The point is the core of that team was functioning so well. She does not seem to be at the ending stages of her career. She's obviously still a valuable contributor. Why do you break up a winning combination that is probably at the prime of their careers?
There might have been some other issues there, maybe personality. Sometimes we don't really know that.
But fans don't come to see personalities; they come to see wins.
That's true.
And they were winning with her.
Then we have the team that's going to be playing the Fever tonight, the Washington Mystics. They're playing a different style of ball. They've been an up-tempo team. And for the most part, a couple good players. They're blending, like everybody's blending together at this point. And they have a couple players on their squad. Irfen and Citron.
Very often, yeah.
They're going to challenge Paige Breckers for Rookie of the Year honors, according to what I'm reading. And there's a lot of young talent in this league, and like we said, they haven't gelled yet together. I mean, they've only played a few games, but each team plays 44 games on the year, and I think when they get up about 8 or 10 games together, I think we're going to have a better idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there are some reasons why you wouldn't expect teams with a lot of experience and veteran leadership to struggle as much. But even so, when you're bringing in new players who are expected starters, who are expected to be key components, it does take a while for the right combinations, the right spacing, etc., for the teammates to learn each other. It's one thing to do it in practice. It's another thing, which is almost like practice, doing it in the preseason, and they don't play that many preseason games. But once you get up there and everybody is going full speed, it's like almost in any sport. Baseball's a little bit different as far as spring training is concerned, but as far as the more physical sports, where the force is applied and you're going at full speed, full force, it's a lot different in the regular season than it is prior to getting there. And I think that we're seeing some of those teams. I would think that the Sparks would be a team that would show improvement, but as you say, we're only 5 games in. It's not like they're 1-4 or 0-5. They do have a couple of wins, and they played a couple of teams. They played Golden State twice, which as new as Golden State is in the league, they're also an unknown for the team that they're playing early on, which was the case in the opening game. Even though the Sparks won, but that's why the loss the other night in the rematch was so surprising. That
It really was.
they had a chance to see the Valkyries, that they had a chance to see them in the first game when they beat them in Golden State. That I would have been surprised that if you told me it was a 14-point or 9-point win, whatever, I would have said that the Sparks got them on their home court. So yeah, there seemed to be some problems, but I would think they will work it out.
Switching back to, I won't go too deep into this with what we're at, but switching back to the NBA, if it is,
Yeah.
and this is speculation, if it is Indiana against Thunder, what do you think? What would you make the odds if you had to make it? And I mean, you got 2 different styles here, but
you do. And you also have Oklahoma City coming out of what was arguably a much tougher Western Conference, not necessarily through the playoffs, but throughout the regular season. They faced better competition throughout the West. You could make any number of contending teams in the West had legitimate chances to win the conference outside of Oklahoma City. You can't really have done that in the East. Indiana might have been, I don't know that people gave the Knicks a real chance to come out of the East, simply because they had to face the Demons in Boston, and they had played every time the Knicks stepped up in the regular season to face one of the top teams, whether it be East or West, they came up short. So that was it. So you were basically expecting it to be either Cleveland or Boston coming out of the East, because they had less go through. So I like this Indiana team. I would think Oklahoma City, what would they be favored? They're going to have the home court advantage. Maybe, what would they be, like minus 170?
Well, okay, you look at Oklahoma City as an 8.5-point favorite tonight, and think of the first game they played, were about 10-point favorite over Minnesota, and now they're 8.5 tonight. But they can't be anywhere near that high against the Pacers if they play them. Maybe.
No, I'm thinking for the series.
Well, okay. First game, I'd make it maybe 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
And the series, oh boy, what do you say, 170, 180?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, about minus 170, I would think. The Knicks opened, and this is where it's a little confusing. Knicks opened between minus 135 and minus 160 over Indiana for the series before game 1.
Okay.
And if the Knicks would open that high as a favorite over Indiana, what would Oklahoma City open? Unless the perception is, and maybe an evaluation of the rosters might suggest it, I'm not sure, that maybe there isn't as great a gap talent-wise between Oklahoma City and Indiana as there is, or not as great a talent difference between Indiana and Oklahoma City as there was between the Knicks and Indiana. But that said, the Knicks had the better talent to make them that big of a favorite.
Now, now that we've seen all these games with the Knicks, I think most people would say that Indiana deserve to be the better team. And when you look back at their
Well,
January,
excuse me. I would say the Knicks deserve to be the favorite because of the home court advantage, the better record overall. Yes, Indiana did play extremely well since the beginning of January, but it would be hard, I think, to make Indiana a road favorite for the series because the home court is generally so important, especially if it comes to a seventh game.
okay, interesting.
I mean, over the Knicks, I'm saying that the Knicks deserve to be favorites. My question was, I did not think they deserved to be as big a favorite as they were in that -1. I thought -135 was a reasonable price. Some other places had opened it even higher, and then it came down a little bit early.
We'd have to get into the matchups, player against player. SGA against Halliburton at the point.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this. I mean, you're going to be dealing with a very good, the best defensive team in the league against the highest paced team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You really have some matchup issues to really analyze. And then you got the coaches. So if you looked at just the coaches, what would you think?
I have to give Carlisle an advantage coaching simply because he's been around so long. As I said, he played at a high level in the league. He's played in the playoffs. I think he was on a championship team, if I recall, way back when with the Celtics. But that's taking nothing away from OKC.
Well, okay, so let's move along here. We'll go over to this other league. We all know about this league, baseball. Of course.
By the way, did you want to talk briefly about Caitlin Clark and the non-court effect of her absence for possibly more than 2 weeks, and that comes drop off in attendance, especially in visiting arenas and merchandise sales?
I meant to bring that up. Yeah, you're right. She has, like, for example, they moved the game tonight from their normal stadium to a bigger stadium because of her. Mm-hmm. But now she's not going to be there, and she's not going to be at any of these stadiums for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Let's hope it's not too long, but they're saying they could be beyond 2. So she has had an enormous impact on the financial status of this league, and now she's not around. And for some reason, some of the players have resented her. It seems that way. A lot of people say it's racism, and I don't know about that. There's other white players.
I think they resent her a little bit until they go take a look at their paychecks at the end of the month, which are probably significantly better because of what she's brought to the league that they can afford to pay the players. And I think they even got a nice
flying a little bit better class on the planes and stuff. And she's done a lot, but they don't seem to appreciate it, at least some of them. And there's the hate speech and all that stuff. I don't know how much of that's media driven and how much is true. I don't know. But if she's out,
well, you know what? The thing is, they say there's no such thing. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity and all this, whatever the incidents are. It gets people talking about the league, and it gets people curious, and maybe they start watching a little bit more and say, hey, what's all this stuff going on? Is it really true? So maybe, I don't know that any of it is conjured up, but I think they may be taking advantage of the fact that it's one of the top of the 2-3 stories on SportsCenter every night or every other night.
Well, the thing for us, and we're in the sports betting business. For us, I mean, the NBA is about done. It could be by tomorrow night, there only could be 2 teams left.
Yep.
Where you have these teams here, they still have 40 some games to play or 40 games to play. That's going to take us a couple months, and then they're going to have their playoffs. So from a standpoint of more action, more things to look at, we got baseball, we got golf, we got tennis, we got, et cetera, et cetera. And then we got 90 days or 100 days to football. But from the standpoint of having activity and good entertainment and something to bet on, and last year I had a great return on investment in the WNBA. This year's a little bit not as good, but that's, I think, due to I think how many new coaches are there? 8 coaches?
And a new team.
And then these are new teams. So it's all a feeling out process. But I really want this league to succeed and be healthy and make money. So I think with her out, it's going to have a negative effect, but let's hope she's not out too long.
Well, the advantage that they have also, the WNBA, because they play their season. In fact, I would have been surprised if they didn't start the season a little bit later, but they would be basically going up against baseball for much of the summer with the NBA on their off season. Yeah, they have that tournament here in Vegas, for the young players and the draft choices, etc. But basically, the WNBA, if they started it in mid-June instead of mid-May, they'd have 3 months of basketball all to themselves, and it would actually be a lead into the NBA, because if you play, let's say, from June through July, through the August, through the early part of September when the NFL is starting, and then you have your playoffs, by the time the WNBA playoffs are gone, the NBA is getting ready to start.
Correct.
Maybe they just did not want to compete. I don't know if it came up to this or not with the first few weeks of the NFL season, which would be the highlight of their season. I don't know if that was part of it, but right now, okay, would you rather compete against the start of the NFL season, or would you rather compete against the end of the NBA season? And I make that a point because not all sports fans are fans of both football and basketball. If you're a basketball fan and you don't care all that much about the NFL, let's say you follow college football but not the NFL, you'd be watching the WNBA when it gets down to the end of their season in September.
Well, you sure don't want to compete with the NFL. I mean, that's a monster league, and everybody is involved in that, which we are going to touch on even a little bit more later, because we have another show coming up after this one that will be posted tomorrow. But going over to baseball, which we do need to touch on, what do you see going on in baseball that is disappointing, or that you're disappointed in certain teams, like, for example, Baltimore and Colorado, which we didn't expect from anything from them, but we did expect stuff from Baltimore.
Well, Colorado is historically bad, and I think that's a surprise. After we had the Chicago White Sox historically bad season last year. But yeah, I'd have to say, of the teams that were expected to contend either for a division and or a wild card, Baltimore is probably the most disappointing of those teams, sitting as poorly as they are right now. They've got a game against St. Louis. St. Louis has been one of the surprising teams. I don't know that anyone expected them to be in the neighborhood of a few games above 500. I think, a team that's not getting as much notice and is playing surprisingly well, although we expect to be a good team, the Cubs.
That's right. And I guess if you want to talk about a player, Aaron Judge is playing above expectation by a lot. I mean, not only does he hit home runs, but his batting average is enormous.
Yeah, he's hovering around 400. I didn't see what he did last night, but I think he ended the game like at 397 or something like that, 398. So this deep into the season, I mean, if you're hitting near 400 as a regular player with all the at-bats that he's had, and you're doing it on Memorial Day, you're having a really good season. Combine that with his power and his also ability to not be swinging at as many bad pitches as he has in the past. We're getting fooled, developing into a much more, I don't know if you could be much more complete than hitting 60-something home runs, but he's developing into a much more complete player. He's even stealing a couple of bases every now and then too. He's
damn good in the outfield.
Yeah.
We go through here. You got Evaldi.
Atlanta, by the way, Atlanta's another disappointing team.
Yeah, they were expected to be really good.
They got Acuna back now, and Strider made a start last night, and he made one start, then got injured, pitched 4 2/3 innings, gave up a hit and a run. I didn't like the fact that he walked 4 while striking out 7, but sometimes you don't get, after being off for a while, your control is a little bit shaky. But Atlanta still has talent, but they are playing in a division where Philadelphia and the Mets are every bit as strong as they were last year, and maybe even a bit better than they were last year. And the Mets are doing it with really surprisingly really good starting pitching.
Yes, that's very true. And going over to the American League, how surprised are you that Detroit is considered the best or the top 2 teams in the American League?
I might be. Well, it's really hard to say. We all expected Detroit to have a very good season coming off last year's success. They play in a what's expected to be a very contentious division. They've taken charge so far, but Cleveland, Minnesota, and Kansas City, who were all playing good baseball last year, were expected to contend. So you had a figure of all the teams that let's say you expected to be division winners. Detroit may have, if you picked Detroit to win the AL Central, you picked a team that should have overall a very difficult schedule because of the other teams in their division. Maybe if you had the Yankees in the East, you could say that Boston, Toronto, and Tampa Bay are competitive, but I'm not, I think, at the level that the other three contenders are in the AL Central. And out west, we expected Houston to be down a little bit. So when I take a look at the teams in the American League, I really can't. The fact that Detroit is playing as well as they are is surprising. I know they were 35-20, 36-20, something like that, which is an outstanding record. But the thought is that there would have been more teams that would have had records kind of in that vicinity in the American League, and we really haven't seen it that much. I'm going to try and get over there right now, and I'm trying to see what the Yankees are. I think after last night, Yankees are now 34-20. Detroit 36-20 right now. Boston, no, you don't really have any other teams in the American League that I'm seeing. Seattle 23 losses. So I guess Detroit and the Yankees right now are by several games the best teams in the league.
Sure, but the AL Central is actually looking a whole lot better than anybody expected them to look.
Well, I thought the top four teams were, because they played well last year: Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, and Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, had that lengthy winning streak, and then they had a couple of losses, a couple of wins. They had a nice win at Tampa Bay last night. They play this morning, so we really can't do much. I do like Lopez, who goes. Rasmussen is pitching well, so even though the game will start while we're still recording, I had the under last night in the matchup. I liked Ryan against Bradley, and I like the under again today. Unfortunately, you won't be able to, unless I don't know. Are we broadcasting live right now? Because maybe if so,
no, we're recording.
Oh, okay. That I like that low. But Minnesota, Cleveland, Detroit, and Kansas City, I think were all supposed to be good. Now, part of their good records, they all get to beat up on the White Sox a dozen times.
But the choice is you want to beat up on Colorado a lot of times, and that's a really bad team. I'm paging down here, Nathan.
By the way, that's why in the National League West you've got let's see, the Dodgers 15 games over, the Giants 7 games over. You got Arizona. Well, they're a game under 500, and San Diego 9 games over. So they also, I don't know if they've all played Colorado. A number of them have, but when you're 9-46, a bunch of those 46 losses came against division rivals, and yet the other 3 of the 4 teams are over 500, and the 4th team, Arizona, is right around 500.
Isn't it funny? Last night you mentioned Arizona, but there were 2 teams last night that gave up 6-run leads.
Yes,
Arizona being one of them.
Yeah, Arizona gave up a 6-run lead at home. San Diego overcame a 6-run deficit. In fact, Miami scored 6 runs in the top of the 1st inning at San Diego. They did not score again. And the Padres slowly came back into the game in the bottom of the inning, then a couple of more, and it was 6-6, I think, after 4, then 7-6, and I think they ended up winning 8-6. So that's it. And yes, Arizona, and one of the reasons, and again, this is a game that unfortunately I don't know when it'll be posted. Arizona today is about $1.30 favorite over Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh scored 7 runs in the 9th inning last night to beat the Diamondbacks. I think it was 9-6, if I recall. And what that does, that set it up for Paul Skeens, the outstanding rookie from last year, who's gotten off to a very solid start this year and is pitching very well right now. I just want to take a look at the box score from last night's game. I want to see how many pitchers were used in the in that game by Arizona. Although a lot of it came in the 9th inning, they ended up only using 4 pitchers in the game. But you have to wonder how that bullpen feels after blowing that lead, because Burns only went 3 1/3 inning. I didn't see if there was any injury or anything involved
I expected more. I expected more from Burns, but I mean they did have the lead, and then it was obviously the bullpen gave it up.
Yeah, but, no, I'm sorry, he did not pitch for. He pitched Yeah, he pitched 7. I was looking at the Pittsburgh pitcher who also's name begins with BUR, Burrows. Burns pitched 7 innings, gave up 2 runs, 6 hits, struck out 6. He pitched a nice game. He's got an ERA that's still under 3 and a WHIP that's in what I consider a decent range, above average, but not sterling.
When we have been talking a little bit about the contests here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And the one thing that excites me about the contests, because we're going to go into, we have a money management, bankroll management type of series going on. And I've done a couple. This will be number 3, and we're going to do that in about an hour or so, but it'll be posted tomorrow. One of the things that we want to touch on are these contests, not only what's going on in Las Vegas, but because we got the Westgate and the Circle, which are the 2 big ones. And I mean, the Circle alone has 21 million in guaranteed money. We don't know.
The Survivor has 15 million. The regular millions contest, I think, has 6 million. And then I think they had to redo the ad because $1.5 million in that Grandissimo Survivor contest with the $100,000 entry fee.
Correct. How many people have entered that so far? Just one?
I haven't checked since the day they announced it, but I think they had at least 1.
Okay. And was that you?
Guarantee.
No, but was that your entry?
No, wasn't mine.
Okay. That's a pretty hefty number to put
I need to go on like a 60-game winning streak throughout June, July, and August in baseball to approach it.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's what either, a lot of these entries are made up of a bunch of people. It doesn't always. I mean, we've had people like with 12, 14 people put the money up and go into these contests, and put up a couple $100 a piece or something. Mm-hmm. I often wonder how the hell they figure out who's going to pick the games every week. But you can come up with systems but everybody's, if everybody picks a game once a week, then they all have to be hot the whole year.
But the problem is with that, Jim, is let's say you even have 6 people, or let's say 5 people put up $200 each to get the $1,000. So you got 5 people making picks each week. The problem with the Survivor contest is we can't play Dallas this week because we're saving him for week 7 or 8. Now, in a super contest or Circa Millions, and you got 5 people, that's fine because all you're worried about is this week. You don't have to worry which team. But in Survivor, you have to be very careful because you can only use a team once. And then when you talk about the contest having 2, part A and part B of Thanksgiving week, which are 2 separate contest weeks, and same thing for Christmas, you're going to make a total of 20 picks if you survive to the end, and you've got to be very careful that you leave enough for those very short weeks. I think the Thanksgiving week has 8 teams and 4 games, and Christmas, I think, has 6 teams and 3 games, all on Christmas Day, Christmas night. So there's a lot of strategy involved. So it's got to be very difficult to have multiple partners, maybe more than 1, possibly 2, in the Survivor, unless you all get along and you say, you know what, you're going to make the pick this week, because you've always got to be thinking ahead when you're making a Survivor pick, because what you do this week starts to affect what you cannot do in following weeks, and that's use that team again.
Before we sign off, Andy, is there something that we were supposed to talk about that I've forgotten, or something you want to add before we...
No, but we could do maybe just a little bit of tease for the money management series that we're working on. And you talked about contests, and there are some things that you can do, and I think we'll probably be talking about one of them today as one of the introduction things, because we're going to bring up some of the contests that are starting to accept signups around, certainly around Vegas, and I think online as well. I'll tease it by saying we're going to talk a little bit about entering these contests and how that affects bankroll management and what the possibilities are and are not as far as able to use contests as a bankroll management factor.
Also, we do not have the ability in Vegas to bet on FanDuel or DraftKings, but those companies are in a number of states, and they are also doing contests. So we don't have the information correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but we don't have the information yet on what those contests are. And we
don't, but I would think that they're probably similar to the ones that we had, the long-running Westgate Super contest. And we'll talk a little bit about the basic structure of these contests as well to take a look at what you can and can't do. And I would imagine that with the popularity of the Circa Survivor, a lot of these online places will be offering similar contests with similar strategies, similar tweaks. But I think the principle.
I don't know did we lose you? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. I was pausing, waiting for you.
Okay. I heard a noise. I didn't know if you disappeared. Yeah, we're going to try to find out what these other companies are doing so that we can sort of analyze, break those down, and give some advice. But when we talk about betting on a game or a team or a season, win totals or contests, you're digging into your bankroll.
You're tying your money up.
You're tying your money up, but it's fun. You know, the whole idea of all of this is if you're not a professional bettor trying to make a living at this, or a significant part of your bankroll to make a significant part of your living, then first thing we want to do is have fun and not go broke, and give yourself a chance to win 25, 50, 100,000, or if you get really super lucky, $1 million, or like the Circa Survivor, 15 million.
A Circa Millions guarantees $1 million first place prize.
Correct.
They pay 100 places,
Correct.
So
the whole idea
you got to pick 90 games over the course of a season.
We're going to try to give you ideas on how to accomplish all of those things. Is there a for sure formula? No. Is it guaranteed? No. But we've done and been around this, and we know people that have had success at betting and playing contests and betting straight bets. And there's a lot of people that do make a living, not a lot. Okay, a small percentage, but in Vegas, it's a lot because they're all here, or a lot of them are here.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to do that on the Money Management, Bankroll Management show, which we'll be recording in a little while, and it will be aired tomorrow.
And by the way, let me just point something out as far as bankroll management goes. Number one, if there's one word that I would say overall, discipline is a very important part of the whole thing. And the other thing is, and it's I'm going to put the word in quotes negative, and that is learning what mistakes not to make. What not to do is, in a sense, telling you what you should do.
Oh, absolutely. Because the novice bettor is going to make all the mistakes that I've made, you've made, everybody's made, because you don't know better and nobody's out there teaching you. I mean, when we started betting on sports, there was nobody telling you how to do it, what to avoid. Now,
certainly nothing printed, unless if you had a group of people and some of the old sharp wise guys were around, you would sit at the coffee table to talk about it. But there was no widespread dissemination of information that we have today. And again, and the classic example we use is everyone thinks it's easy to hit 60% winners.
Oh, yeah.
Well, take a look at how many games have random results where if the game, let's say an NBA game, if it ended in 46 minutes, you had one result. At the end of the 48 minutes, it was the opposite result. In football, with what the point spread decision changes in the final few minutes. How many games, for example, come within 3 points of the closing point spread number? You'd be surprised what it is. And there's a lot of randomness there just because of the nature of the game. And especially in the NFL, you're going to have teams that go 3-16 and 3-14, and teams that go 14-3, just because of the way that you got to have things balanced out. But the gap in talent between the best team and the worst team is not that great. Now, it's not that way in college just because of recruiting and everything, but because of the draft and being able to having a salary cap, the overall talent between the best team and the worst team is not all that great. Yeah, there'll be a few extremes, but for the most part of the 32 teams, it's fairly level, with the exception of maybe one or two key players at each end that were really good, really bad, draft busts, etc., surprises. But I think, Jim, a lot of it comes down to personnel management. It comes down to organization. It comes down to coaching. Some coaches have a way of winning. Look at Andy Reid. He was probably a Hall of Fame coach with what he did in almost 20 years in Philadelphia, 15 years in Philadelphia. Well, that Hall of Fame coach goes over to Kansas City, and he could be in there twice if they wanted to give it to him for Philadelphia and Kansas City. And then there are other coaches who are retreads, go around and around and don't have success. So when you start seeing that coaches can, and Andy Reid's just one example of a coach. We'll see what Pete Carroll does this year, for example, with the Raiders. Look at Jim Harbaugh already. He had success in San Francisco. He had he took over a team that had some issues last year, got him into the playoffs with the Chargers last year. So I think coaching, organization, commitment at top. Look at Cincinnati right now with the defensive lineman who they don't want to give a contract to, and they say, well, look at all the contracts extensions we did with the offense. Yeah, but what cost you the playoffs last year, Cincinnati, was your defense. You want to keep the key players who made that defense really good. So things other than the talent on the field determine a lot of these point spread outcomes. So hitting 60%, is it possible? Yes. Have we achieved it? Yes. Season to season? No.
Absolutely.
For the most part.
Andy, this is Andy Iskoe and Jim Feist here in Las Vegas, and this is the Playbook ATS podcast. We're on YouTube, Proline TV, and we will also air this on the jimfeist.com channel. And this channel is free. So tell your friends about it and comment on the show. We like to answer the comments. We love, even if you criticize and tell us that we're dumbasses, that's fine too.
Ask us questions if there's something you'd like to see covered that we may not have considered.
Tell us what you want us to talk about, because we can't answer everyone. We can't comply to everybody, but we're going to try to do the best we can with that. Great information. We're trying to teach you how to win, also trying to teach you how not to lose.
Yeah.
So
you just made a very key point. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about games and who we think we like to win, who we're betting on, but we're also trying to give out information so that you can do the kind of thinking, so that you can pick out the games that you feel you have the edges in. Jim said it right. Teaching you how to win and how not to lose, what mistakes to avoid, what things to look for, what things Jim always talks about in the baseball, some of the key things he looks for. I talk about some of the things as well. Teaching you how to, what's the old saying about, I can give you a fish and feed you once, or teach you to fish and you can feed yourself for a lifetime, something like that?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And my dog is speaking up. Can you hear him in the background?
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear him, but
maybe he's saying take the dog tonight. Wolves and dogs are not that far apart in species.
He always says take the dog. That's the dog's way. Anyway, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, and stay tuned, because tomorrow we're going to have the Bankroll Money Management Show that Andy and I are going to do in a few minutes, but it'll air tomorrow. Andy, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody out there, folks, for listening, and
good luck.
Hopefully I sign off the proper way, because the one day I forgot to do it and it just kept recording for hours. So the technical part about this is very difficult for me. Anyway, thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, viewers.